about 3:30 in the morning. I am here to record my review for ROH TV for the July 10th episode. My recording schedule was a little bit weird this weekend because of Best in the World. I actually ended up watching the pay-per-view before I watched ROH TV, so this is kind of a weird way of recording things. You guys are getting 2 episodes of the podcast this week instead of 1, so extra content. That's cool. So I want to go a rundown of what we had as far as ROH TV goes. Before I get to that, it's Tuesday morning, like I said. Yesterday, we did get the unfortunate news that wrestling legend Paul Orndorff has passed away. I, as a lot of other people, saw the Twitter video that was posted, I think, just a few weeks ago. At least I ran across it a few weeks ago. Posted up on Twitter. Paul Orndorff, very kind of out of it, not really understanding basically who he was or what his life was. It was very sad. I didn't watch a ton of it, couldn't really stand to. Hopefully anyone, I'm sure, would understand. It was very unfortunate to look at someone I used to watch on the TV through my childhood like that. Very unfortunate. I wanted to talk a little bit about him. Now, I'm sitting here with a bunch of notes that I made right before the podcast, stuff about his NWA career, and there's nothing wrong with these accomplishments. Former NWA Mid-South heavyweight champion, former NWA North American tri-state champion, NWA tag team champion, many people, NWA Southeast champion. His list of accomplishments as far as championships he won, at least before the WWF, he's got quite a laundry list, at least as stands for back in the day. As you know, these days they like to play hot potato with the championships, and it doesn't necessarily mean what it once did. But back in the day, if they gave you a championship, you usually held on to it at least for a while. It was very rare, unless you were a transitional champion, that you would hold the belt for a night or a week. It happened fairly often. He's got all these NWA accomplishments, and all these accomplishments should definitely be recognized. I wanted to talk a little bit more in depth about his WWF career, just because that's the way I'm more familiar with him. To go back a little bit in my life, I grew up in a small town, and there was a video rental store that sold old Coliseum home videotapes. Which is the way WWF used to distribute their VHSs. I'm dating myself there just by using that term. So me and my mom would go into this old rental video store in our town, and it would have, I don't really remember seeing a lot of wrestling tapes for rent. It must have been a back catalog of rental tapes that they were clearancing just to get out. Maybe people weren't renting them or whatever. But that was my first, in my brain, my first real memory of watching wrestling. I do know from being told by my parents that we used to watch it even before that, but that's fresh in my brain. Those are my getting those tapes and watching them. That's my first vivid memory of watching wrestling. And through those tapes, I watched several WrestleManias, several SummerSlams, several Survivor Series, several Coliseum home video collections, and seen many, many Paul Orndorff matches, of course. You can't really talk about Paul Orndorff without talking about the very first WrestleMania. The man headlined it with Roddy Piper against Hulk Hogan and Mr. T. It's actually kind of sad to think that now, as far as those four go, half of that entire main event is dead. That's very unfortunate. But I remember getting that tape and watching it, and thinking the match was great. The match that stood out to me the most, the Paul Orndorff match that probably stood out the most, So it would have been on one of two tapes. I talked about getting those tapes. There was a collection of Hulk Hogan's greatest hits. I can't remember what it was called. It went from him winning the title from the Iron Sheik, who, ironically, the night that actually the Iron Sheik lost the title to Hulk Hogan, that was the same night that Paul Orndorff debuted in the WWF. So that's kind of strange. But the video went from that to various other feuds and things that Hulk Hogan did in the couple years following that. And then there was another WWF tape just called Grudge Matches. Now, I don't remember for sure which match or which tape this match was on, but the match that stood out to me as far as the Paul Orndorff match, I'm sure stood out to a lot of people, is the steel cage match that he had with Hulk Hogan. Big grudge feud, builds up to this cage match. Paul Orndorff has turned on his brother Hulk Hogan. They've been friends up until this point, and Paul Orndorff turns on him. The feud builds up to this cage match. And obviously everyone remembers the, I guess what you'd call double jump down finish, where they both climb the cage and get out to the back or get outside of it and then jump off, and both their feet hit the floor at the same time. I just remember that being a really big deal, them restarting the match and then Hogan winning the match, and then the interviews after the match, Bobby the Brain Heenan swearing that Paul Orndorff's feet hit the floor first and that he was going to make sure that the footage was reviewed, and in a month or less, the belt would be around Paul Orndorff's waist. I remember that match vividly. Like I said, he had big NWA runs. His list of NWA accomplishments is fairly long. I went over some of the championships he won. After his WWF stint, he had a short stint in WCW in 1990, somewhat uneventful from what I read. After that, he kind of bounced around until he found a home in Smoky Mountain Wrestling in 1992. After his run in Smoky Mountain Wrestling, from the information I saw online, I guess he was actually signed from WCW from 92 to 2001. In all honesty, as far as the stuff that I remember watching, except for the WCW Television Championship Tournament, I don't remember a lot of him in WCW, and it could just be that his matches didn't stand out to me because they didn't make a big deal about them. Whatever the situation may be with that, I just don't remember him being in WCW a whole lot. I think after 95 or 96, they either didn't use him much or he had retired, whatever the situation was. But I wanted to share those memories, and again, it's very unfortunate that we lost a great legend yesterday at the age of 71. So wanted to get out that, and my condolences to his surviving family. It is never fun to lose a loved one, a father, as I know firsthand. I'm not going to get into that right now, but So wanted to send my condolences to the Paul Orndorff family. Now, flipping through my notes here. Now, getting on to what I would normally talk about, ROH TV. I've got it dated 7/10. That's Saturday. That's when I normally would have watched it. But, again, band show. I just got done watching the ROH TV. So, the ROH TV show started out with Joe Keys and Dante Caballero, I believe is how you pronounce his last name. Not too familiar with these two guys. Would appear that they were just ROH dojo guys from the ROH dojo. At this, as far as I know, was their first time on TV, but they were against the Briscoes. The week before this, the Briscoes had their fight on the farm where they again beat the living dog shit out of each other. It was a really great match, but I wouldn't even call it a match. Really great cinematic fight, I guess. It's hard to put a name to whatever that was. If you haven't seen that fight on the farm, I really suggest that you go back and you watch it. Great stuff there. But this tag team match, I don't know that I'd call it a squash match, but it was basically maybe one step up from being a squash match. Joe Keys and Dante, they did get some offense in. An interview before the match, actually, I believe it was Joe Keys that said that they were getting ready for a Sandy Fork ass whooping, and that's more or less what this match was. This was just a device for the Briscoes to get back into the tag team circle after having their fight on the farm. It definitely accomplished that. Again, not entirely a squash match, but pretty damn close. After that, we had the PJ Black versus Flip Gordon match. Good match, honestly. The match itself was kind of overshadowed by Brian Johnson on commentary. I honestly thought he was hilarious. That joke that he cracked about how when the Briscoes were born, the nurse had the tinted incubator when they were born. Hilarious joke. I just kind of killed the joke. Go back and watch it. He tells it much better than I do. Flip Gordon won by submission. Again, not a lot to talk about with that match. It was a very good match, but again, the standout in that match was just Brian Johnson on commentary. I personally really enjoy Brian Johnson. I think he is great on the mic. I think he is great in the ring, and he just kind of overshadowed this match just with his verbal skills. Again, Flip Gordon did win the match by submitting PJ Black. So, a little bit of an unusual formula. In recent weeks, at least, and most of the time, ROH TV usually just has a match, and then we'll get maybe a few, whatever the situation may call for, a few promos, some video packages, maybe hyping a feud that then is going to have a match afterwards, whatever the case may be. This, I'm guessing, probably because of the Best in the World pay-per-view, immediately following the PJ Black and Flip Gordon match, we got a triple threat tag team match. Dragon Lee and Kenny King versus Jay Lethal and John Gresham versus Brody King and Tony Deppen. Really good match. ROH does their triple threat matches a little bit different, and I like that. It's not always the formula where maybe in a singles match, 3 guys will start in the ring, one of them will get knocked out, he'll be outside the ring for 5 minutes while the other 2 duke it out, he'll come in, and that guy will come back, knock one of the other guys out. It's not like that. This match was not like that. Dragon Lee and Kenny King actually spent most of the match on the outside of the ring, basically picking their spots, pulling out whoever they felt like pulling out, and beating their ass and leaving them laying. And this was a formula that they kept hashing out over and over and over again. A formula that worked, actually, because at the end of everything, Kenny King ended up pinning John Gresham to win the match. And that pretty much sums up ROH TV for the week. There really wasn't a ton to talk about. We did get 3 really good matches. Not much for video packages or anything, but of course, heading into the pay-per-view, it was what it was. This TV program was basically filler to get us to the pay-per-view, and it did that. It gave us previews of a bunch of the major matches, which if you want to hear about those, if you haven't watched it, I suggest you go and watch the pay-per-view and then go back and look up my review on the pay-per-view itself. So that's what I would suggest doing. We got a little bit of news at the end of the ROH TV show. Next week, we are getting Quinn McKay versus Mandy Leon, which has ROH Women's Championship implications. I know that it's been said that if Quinn McKay wins, she's going to be in the title tournament. I assume that's the same. I think Mandy Leon is already in the tournament, if I'm not mistaken. So this is just a chance for her to get in, Quinn McKay to get in the tournament. So we'll get that next week, and then we'll get a 4-on-4 match between the oh god. It was, hold on, I feel like a bad host or whatever here. Dead air. It was okay. It's gonna be the Foundation versus the Shane Taylor promotions. I believe it is. So that should be really interesting. Looking forward to that. They also on the ROH website, since I'm already on here, they have already given us details about their next pay-per-view. So their next pay-per-view will be September 12th at Lakeland, Florida. Death Before Dishonor tour pay-per-view, which will hold the finals of the women's title tournament, which I am looking forward to. I was actually planning on going through the bracket of the women's tournament. I wanted to keep this to our normal 15 to 20 minute formula, which we're already at about 20 minutes. This is actually one of my longer episodes, apart from my hour-long ROH Best in the World review, which, again, I highly recommend you go and listen to. But just with the length and everything that happened with Paul Orndorff and me blabbing on about him for how long that took, the Women's Championship Tournament bracket, I'm going to go ahead and save that for next week. So next week we'll do the ROH TV review for that weekend, and then we'll get into the brackets, how they're going to have the matches set up for the brackets, who's going to be taking on who, and get into at least a couple of picks of people who I think may end up walking out of Death Before Dishonor with the Women's Championship. So I thank you for listening, and we will get back with you guys next week.